The whispers started before I even entered the hall. I could hear them threading through the heavy oak doors, sharp, cutting, wrapped in laughter that wasn't meant to include me. My fingers trembled against the worn fabric of my dress, the only one I owned that didn't have visible patches. It was pale blue, faded from too many washes, and it hung on my frame like it was apologizing for existing, much like me. "She actually came," someone hissed, and the words slithered under the door like smoke. The presentation ceremony happened once every 5 years, when all unmated wolves between 18 and 25 gathered in the grand hall to be seen, to be chosen, to find their place in the pack hierarchy. It was supposed to be magical. For me, it felt like walking toward my own execution. I pressed my palm against the cold stone wall, steadying myself. The corridor smelled of pine and old wood, mixed with the expensive perfumes drifting from inside. My own scent was simple, lavender soap I'd made myself, because I couldn't afford anything else. Everything about me was simple, plain, wrong. The door opened before I could gather more courage, and Vera appeared, her dark eyes widening when she saw me. "Clara," she breathed, and I heard the pity in her voice before she tried to hide it. "You're here." "I have to be," I said quietly. "It's required." Vera was one of the few who didn't treat me like I carried a disease. We'd grown up together, back when children didn't yet understand that some of us were born different. But even her kindness had limits. She glanced behind her, into the hall where music played and laughter echoed, then back at me. "Maybe you could—" she started, then stopped. We both knew what she was going to say. "Maybe you could wait outside. Maybe you could leave. Maybe you could spare yourself. I'll be fine." I lied. I wasn't fine. I hadn't been fine since my 14th birthday, when my wolf should have emerged and didn't. When weeks turned to months, and months turned to years, and the truth became undeniable. I was broken, incomplete. In a world where your wolf defined your worth, your strength, your very right to exist in the pack, I was nothing. Wolfless. They had other words for it too. Freak, defect, hollow. I'd heard them all, whispered behind hands, shouted across training fields, carved into my locker at school. My mother had cried for months. My father stopped looking at me altogether before he left. And the pack treated me like a ghost, something to step around, to pretend wasn't there. Vera squeezed my arm once, a gesture of solidarity that felt more like goodbye, and disappeared back into the hall. I stood alone in the corridor, my heart hammering against my ribs. "You don't have to go in," a voice in my head whispered. "You could run. No one would miss you, but I would know." I would know I ran. I pushed open the door. The grand hall was breathtaking in a way that made my chest ache. Hundreds of candles flickered in iron chandeliers, casting golden light over the assembled wolves. The females wore gowns that shimmered like moonlight on water, silks and satins in deep jewel tones, their hair styled in elegant twists and braids adorned with silver. The males stood in clusters, powerful and confident, their eyes scanning the room like predators assessing prey. I felt every gaze that landed on me and then skittered away like I'd burned them. The hall fell quieter as I walked, not silent, but muted enough that I knew they were talking about me. I kept my eyes forward, my spine straight despite everything in me wanting to curl inward and disappear. My pale blonde hair, the one thing about me that might have been pretty, hung loose down my back because I didn't know how to style it like the other girls. My dress was a child's costume in a room full of queens. "I can't believe she showed up," a voice carried from my left. "Does she really think anyone would choose her?" Laughter rippled outward. My face burned, but I kept walking toward the edge of the room, toward the shadows, where I could at least pretend to blend in. The presentation ceremony wasn't just about finding mates, though that was part of it. It was about the pack seeing its future, its strength. Alphas and betas observed the young wolves, noted who showed promise, who carried good bloodlines, who would strengthen the pack. And then there was me, a walking reminder that sometimes bloodlines failed. Sometimes the moon goddess turned her face away. I found a spot near a stone pillar, partially hidden by a cascade of ivy that someone had woven with white flowers. From here, I could observe without being so obviously on display. I watched as Vera laughed with a group of females, her burgundy dress catching the light. Watched as Thomas, who'd once been my friend before his wolf emerged strong and dominant, surrounded by admirers, watched the life I would never have unfold before me, like a story I wasn't allowed to read. Pathetic, isn't it? I turned to find Celeste standing beside me, her beauty sharp as a blade in a dress of midnight blue. She'd been my cruelest tormentor since the day my wolf failed to appear, as if my defect was a personal insult to her perfection. "What do you want, Celeste?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I want to understand why you're here. This ceremony is for wolves, Clara. You're just human, wearing a dress." The word human came out like poison. To the pack, humans were weak, breakable, lesser. And I was something worse. A wolf who failed to be. "I belong to this pack," I said quietly. "I have a right. You have nothing." Celeste leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow cut deeper than her shouts. "You're a mistake, an embarrassment. And tonight, in front of everyone, we'll all be reminded of exactly what you are. Nothing." She walked away before I could respond, her laughter trailing behind her like perfume. My hands shook, and I pressed them against the cool stone of the pillar, trying to anchor myself. Trying not to cry. Don't let them see. Don't give them that. The music swelled, and the ceremony began. Elder Thompson stepped onto the raised platform at the front of the hall, his gray beard immaculately groomed, his robes bearing the symbols of our pack, the crescent moon and crossed pines. He raised his hands, and silence fell like snow. "Tonight, we gather to honor tradition." His voice boomed across the hall. "To witness the strength of our young wolves, to celebrate bonds that will shape our future. Tonight, we present our unmated to the pack and to our honored guests." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Honored guests. I'd heard rumors that alphas from neighboring packs had been invited, that alliances were being considered. Politics I didn't understand and would never be part of. One by one, names were called. Each wolf stepped forward into the light, presented themselves with pride. The crowd responded with approval, nods, smiles, respectful murmurs. Some of the presentations ended with immediate interest from dominant wolves, the first threads of potential bonds forming in exchanged glances. I watched it all from my shadow, feeling like a creature outside looking in through glass. Then Elder Thompson's expression shifted, became harder. "Clara Whitmore," he called, and my name sounded like an accusation. The hall went utterly silent, every head turned toward me, every eye found me in my hiding place behind the pillar. The weight of their collective judgment pressed down on my shoulders like stones, and for a moment I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "You can do this," I told myself. "Just walk forward, just survive the next 5 minutes." I stepped into the light. The walk to the platform felt endless. I heard the whispers, no longer bothering to hide themselves. "The broken one. No wolf at all. Why is she even—" Disgrace to her bloodline. Each word was a small knife, but I kept walking. When I reached the platform and turned to face the crowd, I saw their faces clearly. Disgust, pity, discomfort, amusement. Celeste stood near the front, her smile triumphant. Elder Thompson wouldn't meet my eyes. He cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Clara Whitmore," he said again, his tone formal but strained. 23 years old, daughter of Richard and Margaret Whitmore, bloodline of the Silver Ridge branch, historically strong in healing and tracking. Someone laughed at that last part. The irony was too much. Historically strong, currently broken. I stood there, my hands clasped in front of me to hide their shaking, and waited for it to be over. The protocol required a moment of silence, a moment for any interested wolf to step forward. No one would. No one ever had. This was just ritual humiliation dressed up as ceremony. The seconds stretched like hours, then the doors at the back of the hall burst open. The sound was like thunder, and every head whipped toward the entrance. The candles flickered wildly, and a wind that tasted of winter and wild places swept through the hall, carrying a scent that made every wolf in the room tense instinctively. Power, dominance, alpha, but not just any alpha. 3 figures entered, and the crowd parted like water, stumbling over themselves to move aside. I couldn't see clearly from the platform, could only catch glimpses between bodies, but I felt it. A presence so overwhelming it seemed to pull all the air from the room. Elder Thompson's face had gone pale. "Your Majesty," he stammered, bowing so low his beard nearly touched the floor. We weren't expecting. We had no word. The crowd was bowing too, dropping like dominoes, and through the gaps, I finally saw him. The Alpha King. I'd heard stories my entire life. Everyone had. He was legend and nightmare woven together, the most powerful alpha in 5 generations. The one who'd unified the fractured packs of the Northern Territories through a combination of strategic brilliance and terrifying dominance. He was said to be ruthless, cold, impossible to manipulate or deceive. Some called him a tyrant, others called him their salvation. No one called him anything to his face except Your Majesty. He was taller than any wolf I'd ever seen, broad-shouldered and moving with a predator's fluid grace. Dark hair fell to his collar, and even from a distance I could feel the intensity of his gaze sweeping over the hall. He wore black, simple, elegant, expensive, and radiated an authority that needed no crown or decoration. 2 wolves flanked him, clearly guards, though they'd need to be powerful in their own right to stand beside him. One was a woman with auburn hair pulled back severely, her eyes scanning for threats. The other was a man built like a mountain, his scarred face impassive. The Alpha King walked forward, and the crowd pressed back further, giving him a wide path. Elder Thompson was still bowing, still stammering apologies and welcomes. And then the king's eyes found me. Time seemed to stop. His gaze locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. It was like being seen for the first time in my life, truly seen, not looked through or looked away from, but seen down to my bones. Those eyes were silver gray, the color of storm clouds, and they held mine without flinching, without disgust, without pity. He was staring at me like I was the only person in the entire hall. My heart hammered so hard I thought everyone must hear it. I couldn't look away, though every instinct screamed at me to lower my gaze, to show submission, to hide. But something in his stare held me frozen, pinned like a butterfly to board. The king walked forward, toward the platform, toward me. The crowd's confusion was palpable. Elder Thompson straightened, clearly baffled. "Your Majesty, we were just concluding the presentations. If you'd like to observe..." The king ignored him completely. He climbed the platform steps with the fluid confidence of someone who'd never doubted his right to any space he occupied. And then he was standing in front of me, so close I could smell cedar wood and winter frost, could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes. Up close, he was devastating. Beautiful in a harsh, masculine way that seemed carved rather than born. There was a scar along his jawline, another disappearing into his collar. His face was all strong angles and controlled power, but it was his eyes that undid me. They studied me with an intensity that made me feel transparent, like he was reading every fear, every wound, every desperate hope I'd ever hidden. "What is your name?" His voice was deep, rough, like stones grinding together. "Clara," I managed. "Clara Whitmore." "Clara," he repeated, and the sound of my name in his mouth made something in my chest tighten. He tilted his head slightly, still studying me. "They're afraid of you." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "What?" "The wolves in this room." He glanced briefly at the crowd, at their confused, shocked faces, then back to me. "They're afraid of you. That's why they treat you this way." I almost laughed, the sound bitter and broken before it could emerge. "I'm wolfless. I'm no threat to anyone." "Wrong," he said simply. Then, before I could process what was happening, he turned to address the hall, his voice carrying to every corner without him needing to shout, "I claim this female as mine." The silence that followed was absolute. My mind went blank. The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. Elder Thompson found his voice first. "Your Majesty, there must be... She's mine," the king repeated. And there was steel in his voice now, a warning that silenced the elder immediately. He turned back to me, and suddenly his hand was extended, palm up, an offering. "Come with me, Clara Whitmore." I stared at his hand like it might burn me. This wasn't possible. This was a dream, or a cruel joke, or I'd finally cracked under the pressure and was hallucinating. But his hand didn't waver, and his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, held something I couldn't name but desperately wanted to understand. Behind me, I heard Celeste's sharp intake of breath, heard the confused murmurs rising like a tide, felt the weight of hundreds of stares, but for once they weren't filled with disgust. They were filled with shock, with disbelief, with something that might have been envy. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in the realm, had just claimed the pack's greatest disgrace, and he was waiting for my answer. I took his hand. What else could I do? When the Alpha King extends his hand, you don't refuse. When the most powerful wolf in the realm claims you before your entire pack, you don't question it. You survive, you adapt. You try to understand later. His fingers closed around mine, warm, calloused, strong enough to crush bone, but holding me with careful restraint. The contact sent a jolt through my entire body, like touching a live wire. My wolf should have responded, should have recognized something, but there was only the hollow silence where she should have been, and the racing of my too human heart. He led me down the platform steps, and the crowd parted like he was Moses, and they were the Red Sea. I caught glimpses of faces as we passed. Vera's mouth hanging open in shock, Thomas's confusion, Celeste's rage barely contained behind her perfect mask. Elder Thompson looked like he might faint. "Your Majesty," the elder called after us, his voice shaking. "Perhaps we should discuss. There are protocols. Her family should be notified. Send word to her parents that their daughter is under my protection now," the king said without turning around, without slowing his stride. "Any possessions she wishes to collect can be sent to the capital." My legs moved automatically, following his lead because I didn't know what else to do. The female guard with auburn hair fell into step beside us, her expression unreadable. The mountain of a man took up position on the king's other side, and together we moved through the hall like a hurricane, leaving chaos in our wake. The night air hit my face as we emerged from the grand hall, cold and sharp and real enough that I knew this wasn't a dream. A sleek black vehicle waited in the circular drive, its engine purring like a contented cat. The mountain man opened the door, and the king gestured for me to enter. I hesitated, and for the first time, his expression softened slightly. "You're safe, Clara," he said quietly, and somehow I believed him, or maybe I just wanted to believe him so desperately that I made myself. I climbed into the vehicle. The interior was luxury beyond anything I'd experienced. Leather seats that felt like butter, subtle lighting, space enough that my little bedroom could have fit inside. The king slid in beside me, and the door closed with a solid, final sound. The female guard took the passenger seat. The mountain man drove. We pulled away from the grand hall, from my pack, from the only life I'd ever known, and I watched through the tinted window as the building grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. Only then did I let myself breathe. What just happened? The words escaped before I could stop them, barely more than a whisper. The king studied me for a long moment before answering. "I claimed you. You're mine now." "But why?" My voice cracked. "I'm nobody. I'm broken." You're Omega," he said simply. The word hit me like a physical blow. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "That's impossible. Omegas they're myths. Stories based on truth, like most myths." He settled back into his seat, his large frame somehow both relaxed and coiled with potential energy. "Omegas are rare, Clara, so rare that most packs haven't seen one in generations. They're often mistaken for defects, for broken wolves, because they don't shift like the others." My mind reeled. "I don't understand. I don't have a wolf. I can't—" "You have a wolf," he interrupted gently. "She's just different. Omegas don't emerge at puberty like alphas and betas. They emerge when they're ready, when they're needed, when they find their purpose." He paused, his eyes searching mine. "Or when they find their alpha." The implication hung in the air between us, heavy and impossible. You're saying I'm some kind of what? Your mate? The word felt absurd in my mouth. I'm saying you're Omega. And I recognized what you are the moment I saw you. His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather, the way you stood on that platform, surrounded by wolves who should have protected you, but instead tormented you. The strength it took just to be there. The complete absence of aggression or dominance in your scent, replaced by something else. Peace. Balance. Calm. He tilted his head. Tell me, Clara. When fights break out around you, what happens? I frowned, thrown by the question. They stop, usually. People calm down when I'm nearby, and when someone is hurt or afraid. They come to me sometimes, I admitted slowly. Even the ones who hate me. When they're in pain, I stopped, remembering. Celeste's younger sister, bleeding from a training accident, had run to me instead of the pack healers. Thomas, grief-stricken when his father died, had sought me out despite not speaking to me in years. I thought I was just easy to cry at. Safe because I'm not a threat. You're safe because you're Omega, he said. You bring balance to aggressive wolves. You soothe those in pain. You're the eye of the storm, Clara. And storms need their center. I couldn't process it. My entire life I'd been told I was broken, defective, wrong. And now this stranger, this king, was telling me I was something precious, rare, important. Why should I believe you? The question came out more defensively than I intended. You don't know me. You saw me for 30 seconds and decided, what, that I'm yours? That I'm this mythical thing? I know you stood on that platform with your head high, even though every wolf in that room wanted you to crawl, he said quietly. I know you didn't run, didn't hide, didn't beg for mercy you should never have needed to ask for. I know your hands were shaking, but your voice was steady. I know you're stronger than you think. He leaned forward slightly. And I know what I am, Clara. I'm alpha, not just of my pack, but of all the northern territories. And alphas recognize omegas the way the moon recognizes the tide. The female guard spoke for the first time, her voice crisp and professional. For what it's worth, I didn't believe it either. Omegas were stories my grandmother told. But then I watched you in that hall and I felt it too. The pull to protect you, the instinct that something precious was being mistreated. She glanced back at me. My name is Sasha, by the way, head of His Majesty's personal guard. The mountain driving is Garrett. Charmed, Garrett rumbled from the front seat, his voice surprisingly gentle for someone his size. I slumped back against the leather seat, my mind spinning. This is insane. Yes, the king agreed, but no less true for being insane. We drove in silence for a while. The landscape outside shifted from the familiar forests of my pack's territory to roads I'd never traveled. Everything felt surreal, like I'd stepped sideways into someone else's life. What's your name? I asked finally. Your actual name, not your title. He smiled slightly, the first real expression I'd seen from him. It transformed his harsh features into something almost warm. Dominic. Dominic Ashford. Dominic, I repeated, testing the name. It felt too intimate somehow to use his first name, like claiming a familiarity I hadn't earned. We have about 3 hours before we reach the capital, he said. You should rest. Tomorrow will be complicated. Complicated how? His smile faded. The pack leaders won't be happy about this. About you. They'll question my judgment, demand explanations, test boundaries. He met my eyes. They'll try to find ways to prove you're not what I say you are. Fear spiked through me. So I'm just trading one pack's torment for another's? No. The word was absolute. Because this time, you have me. And anyone who wishes to challenge you will have to go through me first. The temperature in the vehicle seemed to drop several degrees, his dominance rolling off him in waves. I am not a kind man, Clara. I am not gentle. I have done things that would horrify you. But I protect what's mine with everything I am. And you are mine now. The possessive way he said it should have frightened me. Instead, something in my chest loosened, like a knot I'd been carrying for years finally beginning to unravel. I don't understand why you're doing this, I whispered. You don't owe me anything. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than before, almost vulnerable. 7 years ago, my mate died. The words fell between us like stones into still water. She was killed during a territorial dispute, an ambush meant for me. She took the blade that should have pierced my heart. His jaw tightened. I've ruled alone since then. Effective, but hollow. The pack has been stable but not thriving, strong but not balanced. There's been too much aggression, too much conflict, too many dominance challenges. He looked at me. I've needed an Omega for years, Clara. I just didn't know one still existed until tonight. So this is political, I said, and I hated how much that hurt. You need me for your pack. I need you for my pack, he agreed. But that doesn't make it only political. I felt the pull the moment I saw you, the recognition. My wolf knew yours, even though she hasn't emerged yet. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of my pale blonde hair behind my ear. The gesture was unexpectedly tender. You've been alone, haven't you? Surrounded by pack, but utterly alone. I couldn't speak past the lump in my throat. I could only nod. So have I, he said quietly. Perhaps we can be less alone together. The vulnerability in his admission undid something in me. This powerful, terrifying Alpha King was as lonely as I was, as broken in his own way, and maybe that was why he'd recognized me. Not because he was some mystical alpha with special powers, but because loneliness knows loneliness. I'm scared, I admitted. Good, he said. Fear means you understand the stakes. But fear doesn't mean you're weak, Clara. It means you're smart enough to recognize danger while being brave enough to face it anyway. I wanted to believe him, wanted to believe all of it, that I was special, that I mattered, that my brokenness was actually wholeness in disguise, but a lifetime of being told I was worthless didn't disappear in one conversation, no matter how convincing. What if I'm not what you think I am? I asked. What if I'm just broken after all, and you've made a terrible mistake? Dominic's smile returned, sharp and confident. Then I've made a terrible mistake, but I haven't. You'll see. I wasn't sure if his certainty comforted or terrified me, probably both. Sasha turned around in her seat. You should know, Clara, the capital isn't like your pack. It's bigger, more political, more dangerous. There are wolves there who will see you as a threat to their influence. Others who will see you as a weakness to exploit. You'll need to be careful. How am I supposed to be careful when I don't even know the rules? I asked helplessly. You stay close to Dominic, Garrett said from the front. You don't go anywhere without guards. And you remember that anyone who smiles too much is probably lying. That's a cheerful thought, I muttered. Dominic chuckled, a low sound that vibrated through the space between us. Don't worry. You'll have time to adjust before the formal presentation. For now, you're simply my guest. No one will dare approach you without my permission. The way he said it made it clear that permission would be difficult to obtain. I settled back into the seat, exhausted suddenly. The adrenaline that had been keeping me upright since entering the grand hall was crashing, leaving me hollow and shaky. My mind kept replaying the moment Dominic had looked at me, really looked at me, and claimed me before everyone. The shock on Celeste's face, the confusion on Elder Thompson's, the way my entire world had tilted sideways in the space of 5 minutes. Sleep if you can, Dominic said, his voice gentle. I'll wake you when we arrive. I didn't think I could sleep. My mind was too full, my heart still racing, my future a blank page that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. But the steady hum of the vehicle, the warmth of the heater, and the unexpected safety I felt beside Dominic conspired against my intentions. My eyes grew heavy, my breathing slowed. The last thing I felt before darkness took me was something soft and warm settling over my shoulders. Dominic's jacket, scented with cedarwood and winter, and the ghost of his voice saying something I couldn't quite catch, something that sounded like, "Welcome home." I woke to gentle pressure on my shoulder, and Sasha's voice cutting through the fog of sleep. We're here, Clara. Time to wake up. I blinked, disoriented. The vehicle had stopped, and through the window I could see towering stone walls illuminated by torchlight, the Capitol. I'd seen pictures in textbooks, but nothing prepared me for the reality. Massive gates carved with intricate wolf designs, guards stationed at regular intervals along the battlements and beyond the walls, buildings that seemed to climb toward the stars. Dominic had already exited the vehicle and stood waiting, his hand extended once again. I realized I was still wrapped in his jacket, and I clutched it tighter for a moment before forcing myself to move. The night air was colder here, sharper. Or maybe that was just my fear crystallizing in my lungs. I took Dominic's hand and let him help me out, my legs unsteady after hours of sitting. The main entrance will be too public at this hour, he said, leading me toward a smaller gate to the left. We'll use the private passage. Tomorrow will be soon enough for official introductions. Garrett and Sasha flanked us as we walked, their presence both comforting and unnerving. Did I really need guards? Was I in that much danger? The private passage led through a narrow corridor carved into the stone itself, lit by crystals that glowed with a soft blue light. Magic. Something my old pack had little of, but here it seemed woven into the very architecture. We climbed stairs that spiraled upward, and I tried not to think about how high we were going, how far I was from anything familiar. Finally, we emerged into a hallway that took my breath away. High ceilings painted with stars and moons, floors of polished marble that reflected the light like water, tapestries depicting wolves in battle and celebration. Everything spoke of power, history, permanence. These are the royal quarters, Dominic explained, his voice echoing slightly. You'll have rooms here, close to mine. Close to his. My stomach flipped at the implication. He stopped before a set of double doors and pushed them open, revealing a suite that was larger than my entire house back home. A massive 4-poster bed dominated one wall, draped in silvery blue fabrics. Windows overlooked the city below, currently dark, but promising a spectacular view come morning. There was a sitting area with plush furniture, a desk, bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes, and a door that presumably led to a bathroom. This is too much, I breathed. This is yours, Dominic corrected. He walked to the windows and drew the curtains closed. There are clothes in the wardrobe, Sasha's size, so they should fit well enough until we can have some made for you. Bathroom has everything you need. If you require anything else, there's a bell pull by the bed that will summon an attendant. I stood in the center of the room, feeling impossibly small. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Dominic crossed back to me, and for the first time I saw weariness in his face. He looked older in the soft light, the weight of his responsibilities visible in the lines around his eyes. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, we talk. After that. He paused. After that, we figure it out together. Will you? I stopped, embarrassed by what I'd been about to ask. Will I what? Will you tell me the truth? About everything? About what being Omega means? About what you expect from me? About... My voice broke. About whether I'm really safe here, or if this is just a different kind of cage. Something in his expression softened. I will never lie to you, Clara. Never. Whatever else happens between us, you have my word on that. He reached out and gently touched my cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. You're safe here. I swear it. The contact sent warmth spreading through me, and I leaned into it without thinking. How starved I must have been for gentle touch, for kindness, to respond so strongly to such a simple gesture. He pulled away slowly, deliberately, and I felt the loss of it like a chill. Sleep, he said. Tomorrow changes everything. Then he was gone, Sasha and Garrett following, and I was alone in this beautiful, terrifying room that was supposedly mine. I didn't sleep right away. I explored instead, opened the wardrobe to find clothes in rich fabrics and deep colors, nothing like my threadbare dresses back home. Discovered the bathroom had a tub large enough to swim in, and products that smelled of rose and honey. Found books on the shelves about pack history, magic theory, political alliances, things I'd never had access to before. Eventually, exhaustion won. I crawled into the enormous bed, still wearing my faded blue dress, because I couldn't quite bring myself to put on borrowed clothes yet, and pulled the covers up to my chin. The last thought I had before sleep claimed me was that Dominic's jacket still smelled like cedar wood, and I'd tucked it under my pillow like a child with a security blanket. Morning came with sunlight streaming through gaps in the curtains and a knock on the door that made me bolt upright, momentarily forgetting where I was. "Clara? It's Sasha. May I come in?" I scrambled out of bed, running fingers through my tangled hair. "Yes, come in." Sasha entered carrying a tray laden with food. Fresh bread, cheese, fruit, something that smelled like heaven in a ceramic pot. She set it on the desk and turned to study me with those sharp eyes. "You didn't change," she observed. I looked down at my wrinkled dress. I didn't feel right wearing things that aren't mine. "They're yours now. Everything in this room is yours." She gestured to the wardrobe, but I understand. Change is hard, especially when it happens this fast. She poured something from the pot into a cup. Tea, judging by the steam. "Dominic wants to meet with you after breakfast. Nothing formal, just talking, explaining things." I accepted the tea gratefully, the warmth seeping into my cold hands. "Is he angry?" That I'm not. I couldn't articulate what I was trying to ask. Sasha's expression softened in a way I hadn't expected from someone so clearly military in bearing. "He's not angry, Clara. He's concerned. He knows how overwhelming this must be." She sat on the edge of the bed, an informal gesture that made her seem more human and less guard. "Can I tell you something? Off the record?" I nodded, sipping the tea. It was perfect. Honey sweet and warming. I've served Dominic for 5 years. I was there when his mate died, watched him shut down emotionally, become this cold, efficient ruler who cared about duty but nothing else. She met my eyes. Last night was the first time in 5 years I've seen him care about something beyond strategy and survival. The way he looked at you in that hall. She shook her head. "I don't know if you're Omega or not. I don't know if that's even real or just old stories. But I know he believes it, and I know he'll protect you with everything he has." The weight of that settled over me. What if I can't be what he needs? What if my wolf never emerges and I'm just broken? "Then you're broken together," Sasha said simply. "Better than being broken alone." It was such an echo of what Dominic himself had said that I almost smiled. "Now eat," Sasha commanded, standing and returning to her professional demeanor. "You're too thin, and you'll need your strength. The capital doesn't show mercy to the weak." She left me to breakfast, and I discovered I was ravenous. Everything tasted better than food had any right to. The bread still warm, the cheese sharp and creamy, the fruit sweet and fresh. I ate until I was full, then forced myself to face the wardrobe. The clothes were beautiful but practical. Soft leggings, tunics in various styles, a few dresses that were simple but elegant. I chose gray leggings and a cream-colored tunic that fell to mid-thigh, comfortable and unrestricting. There was even underwear in my size, which made me blush for reasons I couldn't quite name. I washed my face in the bathroom, stared at my reflection in the mirror. Same pale blonde hair, same ordinary features, same 2 wide eyes that always looked startled. Nothing special. Nothing that explained why the Alpha King had claimed me. Another knock. This time, Dominic's voice. "Clara, may I enter?" I took a breath and opened the door. He looked different in daylight, still imposing, still powerful, but somehow more human. He wore simple clothes, dark pants, and a fitted shirt that showed the breadth of his shoulders. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd recently bathed, and without the formal clothing from last night. He seemed younger. Maybe early 30s, though with wolves it was hard to tell. "You look better," he said, his eyes scanning me with an intensity that made me self-conscious. "Did you sleep?" "Eventually. You? Some." He gestured to the sitting area. "Will you join me?" I thought we could talk. Properly this time, without an audience. I followed him to the plush chairs near the window, and he opened the curtains, revealing the city below in full morning glory. It was breathtaking. Buildings of stone and wood spreading out in organized chaos, wolves moving through streets, markets already bustling, and beyond it all, mountains rising like sentinels. "This is the heart of the Northern Territories," Dominic said, standing beside me at the window. 50,000 wolves call this city home. Another 100,000 in the surrounding territories. all part of my pack. The numbers were staggering. My old pack had maybe 2,000 members, and I'd thought that was large. "How do you lead so many?" I asked. "Carefully, with advisors I trust and systems that have been refined over generations." He turned from the window to look at me. "But it's not enough anymore. The pack is restless, Clara. Too much dominance, not enough balance. Fights break out constantly. Alliances fracture. We're strong, but we're not stable. Not thriving." He paused. "That's where you come in. You keep saying I'm Omega, but I still don't understand what that means. Practically, I mean. What am I supposed to do?" Dominic sat in one of the chairs and gestured for me to take the other. "Alphas lead through dominance and strength. Betas follow and support. But Omegas bring balance. They calm aggressive wolves, mediate conflicts, provide emotional stability to the pack. Where Alphas are the storm, Omegas are the calm. Where Alphas push, Omegas soothe." That sounds exhausting. He smiled slightly. "It can be. But it's also natural, or it will be, once your wolf emerges. You've already been doing it your whole life without realizing it. Every time someone in pain sought you out, every fight that stopped when you appeared, every moment of peace you brought to chaos. That was your Omega nature, even without your wolf." I digested this slowly. "And you think my wolf will emerge because... Why? Because you're here? Because you've found your alpha," he said quietly. "Omegas don't exist in isolation. They're tied to alphas, balanced by them. Your wolf has been waiting, Clara. Waiting for the right alpha to call her forth." The presumption in that should have angered me. Instead, it made something in my chest ache with longing. What if you're wrong? Then I'm wrong. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, expression serious. "But Clara, I need you to understand something. Even if I'm wrong about you being Omega, even if your wolf never emerges, you're still under my protection, still mine. What I said in that hall wasn't conditional on you being anything other than you." "Why?" The question burst out of me, desperate. "Why would you do that? You don't know me. I'm nobody." "You're not nobody to me." His gray eyes held mine, storm cloud intense. "I saw you stand on that platform with every wolf in the room judging you, hating you, wanting you to disappear. And you didn't disappear. You didn't beg. You didn't apologize for existing. You stood there with your head high and your hands shaking, and you survived." His voice dropped. "That's not nobody, Clara. That's strength beyond what most of these wolves will ever understand." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "You barely know me. Then we'll learn each other," he said simply. "I have time. You have time. We'll figure this out together." A commotion outside the window drew our attention. Raised voices, the sound of people gathering. Dominic's expression hardened, and he moved to look down at the courtyard below. "What is it?" I asked, joining him. Below, a crowd had gathered around the main gates. At their center stood a group of well-dressed wolves, their body language aggressive, demanding. Even from this distance, I could feel the tension radiating from them. "The council," Dominic said, his voice gone cold. "They've heard about you, and they're not happy." My stomach dropped. "Already?" "Word travels fast when the Alpha King does something unprecedented." He turned to me, his expression softening slightly. "Are you ready for this? Because we can delay, keep you hidden for a few more days while things settle." I thought about that platform, about standing before my pack while they judged me, about Celeste's cruel smile and Elder Thompson's discomfort, about a lifetime of hiding and apologizing for existing. "No more hiding," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. "If they want to challenge me, let them come." Dominic's smile was fierce and proud. "That's my girl." The possessive warmth in those words wrapped around me like armor, and together we watched the council wolves shouting at the gates, demanding entrance, demanding answers, demanding to see the freak the Alpha King had claimed. Let them come, I thought, let them see. I wasn't running anymore. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. Massive stone columns rose toward a vaulted ceiling painted with scenes of ancient battles. A long table dominated the center of the room, carved from a single piece of dark oak and surrounded by high-backed chairs. Torches burned in iron sconces along the walls, casting dancing shadows that made the space feel alive and watching. Dominic had given me 30 minutes to prepare before we descended to face them. Sasha had appeared with a dress, not frivolous or decorative, but elegant in its simplicity, deep forest green that somehow made my pale hair look less washed out and more ethereal. She'd braided it back from my face, leaving the length to fall down my back, and pressed a pair of leather boots into my hands. "You need to look the part," she'd said. "Not a victim, not a charity case. You're the Alpha King's chosen. Act like it." Now, standing beside Dominic as we entered the chamber, I tried to channel every ounce of false confidence I possessed. My hands wanted to shake. My stomach wanted to empty itself. But I kept my chin up and my expression neutral, the way I'd learned to do during years of facing my pack's contempt. 7 wolves sat around the table, and they all turned to watch us enter. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. These were the most powerful alphas in the Northern Territories, the ones who advised Dominic, who commanded their own substantial packs, who'd carved out positions of influence through strength and cunning. Dominic's hand rested at the small of my back, a subtle claiming gesture that wasn't lost on anyone in the room. "Counselors," he said, his voice carrying effortless authority. "Thank you for convening on such short notice. We didn't have much choice, did we?" The speaker was a woman perhaps in her 50s, silver threading through her dark hair, her face sharp and intelligent. When the Alpha King claims a mate publicly and without warning, certain conversations become necessary. "Indeed, Counselor Nadine." Dominic guided me to a chair beside his at the head of the table, pulling it out for me before taking his own seat. The gesture was courtly, old-fashioned, and completely deliberate. "Allow me to introduce Clara Whitmore. Clara, these are the 7 members of my council. Nadine of the Frost Peak Pack, Julian of the River's Bend Pack, Marcus of—" "We know who we are," interrupted a burly man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. "What we don't know is who she is, or why you've brought her here." "Careful, Marcus." Dominic's voice dropped to a temperature that made Frost seem warm. "You're speaking about my chosen." "Your chosen," Marcus repeated, leaning back in his chair with deliberate insolence. "Forgive my confusion, Your Majesty, but the last time I checked, you don't need council permission to take a lover. So why the formal presentation? Why the public claiming? Why bring her to council chambers at all unless—" His eyes narrowed. "Unless you intend to make her more than just a warming bed." Rage flickered across Dominic's face, but before he could respond, I spoke. "I'm Omega." The words came out steadier than I felt. Or so I'm told. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Marcus laughed, a harsh, barking sound that echoed off the stone walls. "Omega," he repeated. "Right, and I'm the moon goddess herself." He looked around the table. "Is anyone else hearing this madness?" "Omegas are extinct," said Julian, a lean wolf with calculating eyes. "If they ever existed at all, which most scholars debate." "I don't expect you to simply accept my word," Dominic said calmly, though I could feel the tension radiating from him. "But I know what I sensed, what I recognized. Clara is Omega, and she will be formally recognized as such." "Based on what evidence?" Nadine's voice was sharp, but not unkind. "I mean no disrespect, Your Majesty, but you're asking us to accept something that contradicts everything we know about pack hierarchy. At minimum, we need—" "She's wolfless," another counselor interrupted, a younger man named Theo, if I remembered correctly. "I've already made inquiries about her background. Clara Whitmore, daughter of disgraced wolves from the Silver Ridge Pack, never shifted, never showed any signs of a wolf at all. She's defective, not Omega." The word defective hit like a slap, but I'd heard it so many times it had lost some of its sting. Still, Dominic's hand found mine under the table, his fingers interlacing with mine in silent support. "Her wolf hasn't emerged yet," Dominic said. "Omegas emerge differently, later, under specific circumstances. Any scholar who's actually studied the old texts would know this." "Old texts written by who knows who, how long ago?" Marcus scoffed. Myths and fairy tales, and your restructuring pack hierarchy based on, I'm not asking for your approval, Dominic cut him off, and the dominance that rolled off him made every wolf in the room tense. I'm informing you of a decision I've already made. Clara is under my protection. She will be trained, educated, and integrated into pack leadership. Whether you believe she's Omega or not is irrelevant. She's mine, and that's the end of it. It's not the end of it, Nadine said quietly. And you know that, Dominic. The use of his first name suggested a familiarity, perhaps even friendship. The other packs are already talking. Some are concerned, others are openly mocking. They're saying you've gone soft, that grief has clouded your judgment, that you've claimed a broken wolf out of pity or loneliness. She paused. And if they think you're weak, they'll test you. Test us. The stability you've built over 7 years could crumble. The weight of that settled over me like a stone. I wasn't just risking my own safety. I was risking everything Dominic had built, everything these wolves had fought for. Then let them test me, Dominic said softly, dangerously. I welcome it. It's been too long since anyone remembered why I'm called the Winter King. A shiver ran through the room at that title. Even I felt it. The promise of cold, ruthless violence barely leashed. There is another option, Julian said carefully. A way to prove or disprove whether she's truly Omega, without waiting for some theoretical wolf to emerge. I'm listening, Dominic said, though his tone suggested he already didn't like where this was going. The gathering, Julian continued. It's in 2 weeks. All the major packs convening for the autumn equinox. Omegas are supposed to bring balance, yes? To calm aggressive wolves, to mediate conflicts. He gestured to me. Put her in the middle of that chaos and see what happens. If she's truly Omega, she'll prove it naturally. If she's not, he shrugged. Then we'll know, and you can make different arrangements. You want to throw her into the most volatile political event of the year as a test? Dominic's voice was ice. I want proof, Julian said bluntly. We all do. And frankly, Your Majesty, you need it too. Otherwise this, he waved vaguely at me, will be a permanent question mark on your authority. I could feel Dominic's rage building, could sense him preparing to refuse, to protect me from this trial, but something in Julian's words resonated. They needed proof. I needed proof. Sitting in this room while they debated my existence wasn't proving anything, except that I could be silent and decorative. I'll do it, I said. Every head turned toward me. Clara. Dominic started, but I squeezed his hand, stopping him. If I'm really Omega, I need to know, I said, addressing the room even though my heart was hammering. I've spent my whole life being told I'm broken, defective, worthless. If there's even a chance that's not true, I have to find out. I met Julian's calculating gaze. So yes, I'll attend the gathering. I'll walk into that chaos, and we'll all see what happens. Nadine studied me with new interest. You understand what you're agreeing to? The gathering isn't just a party, girl. It's where feuds are settled, alliances are forged and broken, where dominance battles happen. It's barely controlled violence wrapped in political ceremony. I understand, I lied. I didn't understand at all, but I'd figure it out. I always did. Marcus snorted. This should be entertaining at least. Watching a wolfless reject try to play Omega among the most dominant wolves in the territories. He grinned, and it wasn't friendly. I give her 10 minutes before someone makes her cry. Anyone who makes her cry will answer to me, Dominic said quietly. And trust me, Marcus, you don't want to answer to me. The threat hung in the air, and Marcus had the sense to look away first, though his expression remained skeptical. Then it's settled, Nadine said, and something in her voice suggested she was pleased by this development. Clara will attend the gathering as the Alpha King's chosen. We'll observe, we'll assess, and we'll draw conclusions based on evidence rather than emotion. She looked at me directly. You have 2 weeks to prepare, girl. I suggest you use them wisely. The council meeting continued for another hour, discussing logistics and politics that went mostly over my head. Dominic kept my hand in his throughout, a tether to something solid while everything else felt like quicksand. Finally, mercifully, we were dismissed. The walk back to my chambers felt endless. Neither of us spoke until we were safely behind closed doors, and then Dominic turned to me with an expression that mixed pride, anger, and fear. "You didn't have to agree to that," he said. "I could have refused on your behalf and proved them right." I shook my head. "That I'm just some weak thing you're protecting out of pity? No. If I'm going to be here, if I'm going to be yours, then I need to prove I deserve it, to them and to myself. You don't need to prove anything. Yes, I do." I pulled away from him, pacing to the window. The city spread below, all those thousands of wolves who would judge me, test me, try to break me. You said omegas bring balance, that they calm aggressive wolves. Well, I've been doing that my whole life without even knowing it. Maybe... I swallowed hard. Maybe this is what I was meant for. Maybe this is why I survived all those years of being broken. Dominic crossed to me, and when I turned, he was closer than I expected. Close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes, could smell cedarwood in winter. "You're not broken," he said fiercely. "You never were." "Then let me prove it," I whispered. For a long moment we stood there, the air between us charged with something I couldn't name. Then Dominic raised his hand slowly, giving me time to pull away, and cupped my face with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so powerful. 2 weeks, he said. "We have 2 weeks to prepare you, to teach you what you need to know about pack politics, about reading dominance displays, about protecting yourself." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "But Clara, if at any point it becomes too much, if you want to stop..." "I won't stop," I interrupted. "I'm tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of being afraid." I met his eyes. "I'm ready to fight." His smile was slow and devastating. "Then we fight together." The next 2 weeks were the most intense of my life. Sasha trained me in self-defense, teaching me that being wolfless didn't mean being helpless. "You'll never overpower an alpha in direct combat," she said, her fist stopping inches from my face during a drill. "But you can evade, redirect, use their strength against them. Smart beats strong if you're fast enough." Garrett taught me to read a room, to identify who held real power versus who just postured. "Watch the eyes," he rumbled. "Dominants always watch each other. The one everyone's tracking is the one with actual authority." Nadine, surprisingly, sought me out on the 3rd day. She brought books, ancient texts about omegas, their history, their role in pack structures that predated modern hierarchy. "I don't know if you're truly omega," she said bluntly, "but if you are, you need to understand what that means. Not just to Dominic, but to all of us." She tapped one of the books. "Read, learn, be ready." I read late into each night, absorbing everything I could. Omegas were described as bridges between worlds. Not weak, but differently strong. Not submissive, but able to choose submission as a tool rather than a cage. They were healers and peacemakers, yes, but also strategists and survivors. And they were always, always paired with powerful alphas. The texts suggested it was symbiotic. The alpha's strength protected the omega's peace, and the omega's calm balanced the alpha's aggression. Together, they created stability. I thought about Dominic, his cold efficiency, his controlled violence, his isolation, and I thought about myself, my ability to soothe, to mediate, to bring calm to chaos. Maybe we really were meant to balance each other. Or maybe I was delusional, and in 2 weeks I'd be exposed as a fraud before every important pack in the territories. The night before the gathering, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my window watching the city lights, trying to imagine what tomorrow would bring. A knock on my door, soft but deliberate. "Come in," I called, knowing who it would be. Dominic entered, wearing sleep clothes, loose pants and a shirt that showed the corded muscle of his arms. His hair was mussed, like he'd been running his hands through it. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. "Too much thinking." He crossed to stand beside me at the window, and for a while we just existed in comfortable silence. Then, without planning it, I leaned against his shoulder, and his arm came around me, solid and warm. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said quietly, "you're not alone. I'll be there. Sasha and Garrett will be there. And Clara, He tilted my chin up to look at him. "If anyone tries to hurt you, I will end them. Consequences be damned. That's not very politically wise," I murmured. "I don't care." His gray eyes were molten silver in the moonlight. "You're more important than politics." The confession hung between us, heavy with meaning. And then, before I could think better of it, I rose on my toes and kissed him. It was soft, tentative, a question rather than a demand. For a heartbeat he froze, and I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. Then his hand slid into my hair and he kissed me back, deep and claiming and full of restrained hunger that made my knees weak. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Tomorrow," he whispered. "After tomorrow, we'll figure out what this is between us. But tonight, just stay with me. Let me hold you." So I did. We moved to the plush couch, and he pulled me against his chest, his arms wrapped around me like armor. I listened to his heartbeat, steady and strong, and let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I really was meant for this. Tomorrow would be chaos. But tonight, I was safe. The gathering was held in a massive, natural amphitheater carved into the mountainside, open to the sky but surrounded by towering pines that seemed to watch like ancient sentinels. Hundreds of wolves had already arrived when our convoy pulled up, alphas and their entourages from every major pack in the northern territories, plus representatives from the eastern and western regions. The air thrummed with barely restrained dominance, with tension thick enough to choke on. I stepped out of the vehicle wearing the dress Sasha had chosen, midnight blue that seemed to shift colors in the light, fitted but not restrictive, elegant but not fragile. My hair was woven with silver threads that caught the afternoon sun, and for the first time in my life, I looked like I might belong somewhere powerful, even if I felt like an imposter. Dominic appeared at my side immediately, his hand finding the small of my back. He wore formal attire, black with silver embroidery that marked him as the Alpha King, his presence so commanding that wolves moved out of his path instinctively. "Stay close," he murmured. "Don't respond to challenges. Don't show fear. And remember, you have every right to be here." Sasha and Garrett flanked us as we walked toward the amphitheater. I could feel eyes tracking our progress, hear the whispers starting like wildfire. "That's her, the wolfless one. Claims she's Omega. Can you believe? Looks fragile enough to snap." I kept my chin up and my expression neutral, channeling every lesson Sasha had drilled into me. Don't show weakness. Don't give them ammunition. Walk like you own the ground beneath your feet. The amphitheater itself was breathtaking. Stone seats descended in tiers toward a central floor where gatherings would take place. Banners representing different packs hung from poles: silver wolves, crimson moons, crossed swords, oak trees. At the highest point sat an empty throne carved from black stone, the seat of the Alpha King, symbolically above all others. Dominic led me to a section near the throne, where seats had been reserved for his inner circle. Nadine was already there, along with Julian and several other council members. Marcus sneered when he saw me but said nothing, which I counted as a small victory. "The formal presentations begin in an hour," Nadine said quietly. "That's when every pack will parade their strength, their alliances, their grievances. It'll be chaos, but controlled chaos. The real test comes after, during the social gathering. That's when hierarchies are truly established. And that's when we'll see if she can do what Omegas are supposed to do," Julian added, his tone neutral, but his eyes sharp. "Bring balance to disorder." I wanted to snap at him, to defend myself, but Dominic's hand squeezed mine in warning. "Save your energy. Choose your battles." The hour passed in a blur of arrivals and posturing. I watched pack after pack enter, displaying their power through synchronized movements, dominant wolves at the front, lesser members following. Some groups were elegant and disciplined. Others were barely contained violence, their alphas keeping subordinates in line through sheer force of will. And then the presentations began. Pack leaders approached the throne one by one, offering formal greetings to Dominic, reporting on their territories, making requests or lodging complaints. It was politics dressed up as ceremony, and I tried to follow the undercurrents: who held grudges, who sought alliances, who was testing boundaries. Then came the moment I'd been dreading. "And now," announced the ceremony master, a gray-bearded wolf with a voice that carried across the amphitheater, "the Alpha King will present his chosen." The crowd went silent. Every eye turned toward us. Dominic stood, his presence commanding absolute attention. Wolves of the Northern Territories, honored guests from beyond. I present Clara Whitmore, Omega of the Winter Court, my chosen mate and future queen. The reaction was immediate and mixed. Some gasps of shock, some murmurs of disbelief, some outright laughter, quickly stifled. I felt my face burn but forced myself to stand, to walk to Dominic's side, to face hundreds of judging stares. "Omega," someone called out, a challenge in the word. "Prove it." "Omegas are myths," another voice added. "Stories to scare children. She's wolfless," a third voice declared. "I can smell it from here. No wolf at all. Just a human playing dress-up." The crowd was turning hostile, murmurs building into something uglier. Dominic's dominance flared in warning, but it only created more tension, more aggression pushing back against his authority. And then I felt it. A pulling sensation in my chest, like something waking up after a very long sleep. The noise of the crowd seemed to fade, replaced by something else. An awareness of every wolf present, their emotional states laid bare like open books. Rage here, fear there, jealousy, ambition, pain, loneliness, all of it swirling in a chaotic storm that threatened to tear everything apart. Without thinking, I stepped forward. Away from Dominic's protection, away from safety, into the center of the amphitheater. "Clara," Dominic's voice, sharp with concern. But I barely heard him. The pulling sensation was stronger now, insistent. My wolf, the one that had never existed, the one everyone said was a fantasy, was there. Not fully emerged, not shifted, but present. Aware, and she knew exactly what to do. I closed my eyes and let her guide me. Peace flowed out from me like ripples on still water. Not forced, not aggressive, just there. A calm presence that touched every wolf in the amphitheater, soothing frayed nerves, easing tensions, creating space between anger and action. The hostile murmurs died. The aggressive posturing relaxed. Wolves who'd been seconds from fighting each other blinked in confusion, their rage suddenly distant, manageable. In the silence, I opened my eyes. The entire gathering was staring at me, but their expressions had changed. Wonder replaced mockery, awe replaced contempt, and fear, not fear of weakness, but the kind of fear that comes from encountering something powerful and previously unknown. "Omega," someone whispered, and the word spread like prayer. My legs trembled, suddenly weak. The effort of pushing out that much calm had drained something essential from me. I swayed, and instantly Dominic was there, his arm around my waist, supporting me. "I've got you," he murmured. "You did it. You proved it." But the trial wasn't over. A figure emerged from the crowd, a massive alpha, easily as tall as Dominic, and twice as broad, covered in scars that suggested a lifetime of violence. His pack banner showed a bleeding son, and I recognized him from Garrett's descriptions. Severin, the warlord alpha, known for brutality and territorial ambition. "Impressive parlor trick," Severin said, his voice like grinding stone, making everyone feel peaceful for a moment. "But Omegas are supposed to be more than that, aren't they?" He smiled, and it was terrifying. They're supposed to be able to handle real dominance, real aggression. He took a step closer. "Let's test that." His dominance slammed into me like a physical blow, crushing, overwhelming, designed to make me submit, to break me. It was every bully I'd ever faced, every moment of humiliation and rejection, condensed into pure oppressive force. I should have crumbled, should have dropped to my knees, should have shown my throat, should have proved that I was exactly what they'd always said, too weak, too broken, too human. Instead, my wolf rose to meet him. She didn't fight his dominance with her own. That wasn't what Omegas did. Instead, she flowed around it like water around stone, accepting it without being crushed by it, finding the spaces between his aggression where peace could exist. His dominance was a storm. My wolf was the eye at its center, calm and untouchable. Severin's eyes widened. He pushed harder, his dominance increasing until lesser wolves around us actually whimpered and backed away. But I stood my ground, my wolf wrapping that oppressive force in layers of peace until it lost its sharp edges, until it became just another element of the atmosphere rather than a weapon. Enough. Dominic's voice cut through the tension. You've made your point, Severin. She can withstand your dominance. Are you satisfied? Severin stared at me for a long moment, something like respect flickering in his scarred face. Then he laughed, a genuine sound of surprise. She really is Omega. I'll be damned. He inclined his head slightly, the closest thing to a bow someone like him probably ever gave. My apologies, little wolf. I had to know if you were real. He retreated back into the crowd, and slowly, the gathered wolves began to relax. Conversations resumed, though now they were speculative rather than hostile. I'd passed the test, or at least the first test. Dominic guided me back to our seats, his concern evident in the tension of his jaw. Are you all right? You shouldn't have had to. I'm fine, I said, though my hands were shaking. Is it always going to be like that? People testing me? For a while, yes, Nadine said from behind us. You're unprecedented, Clara, the first confirmed Omega in living memory. Everyone will want to test your limits, to understand what you can and can't do. She paused. But you handled Severin's dominance better than wolves twice your age. That'll spread. People will think twice before challenging you now. The rest of the gathering passed in a blur. I was approached by dozens of wolves, some curious, some respectful, some still skeptical, but willing to observe. I felt my wolf presence helping me navigate it all, smoothing over potential conflicts, reading emotional currents, knowing instinctively when to speak and when to remain silent. It was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating. This was what I'd been meant for. This was why I'd survived years of being broken. Because I wasn't broken at all. I'd just been dormant, waiting. 3 months later, I stood in the same amphitheater, but everything had changed. The gathering wasn't hostile this time. It was celebratory. Pack leaders had come from across the territories to witness my formal coronation as queen, as Dominic's mate, as the Omega who'd brought unprecedented stability to the northern territories. Conflicts that had simmered for years had been mediated. Alliances that had fractured were reforming. The constant dominance battles that had plagued Dominic's court had decreased dramatically, replaced by something approaching actual cooperation. I wasn't naive enough to think I'd solved everything. There were still wolves who resented me, still challenges to face, still moments when I felt overwhelmed by the responsibility. But I had Dominic beside me, steady and fierce, and devoted. I had Sasha and Garrett, who'd become more than guards. They were friends. I had Nadine's sharp wisdom, and even Marcus's grudging respect. And I had my wolf, finally emerged fully, a presence of silver and peace that balanced Dominic's storm-gray dominance perfectly. The ceremony was beautiful, ancient words spoken under the open sky, bonds recognized by gathered packs, my hand in Dominic's as we stood before his people, our people. When it was over, when the crown had been placed on my head and the cheers had faded, Dominic pulled me close. Do you remember what I said to you that first night? He murmured against my hair, that maybe we could be less alone together? I remember. We're not alone anymore, he said. Either of us. We have each other. We have this. He gestured to the gathered packs, to the stability we'd built, to the future spreading before us. Thank you, Clara, for being brave enough to stand on that platform, for being strong enough to stand here now. I looked up at him, this powerful alpha king who'd seen worth in me when no one else had, who'd claimed me before a hostile crowd, who'd fought beside me through every challenge. Thank you for seeing me, I whispered, for recognizing what I was when I didn't even know myself. He kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of promise. And the gathered wolves howled their approval, not in mockery this time, but in genuine celebration. I'd been called a freak, a defect, a broken thing unworthy of love or belonging. They'd tried to make me believe I was nothing. They were wrong. I was Omega, I was queen. I was exactly where I was meant to be. And I was finally, beautifully, completely home.